Hi everyone. In today's episode of Know Your Major podcast, we have with us Mr. Ayush Gharat. Ayush is currently pursuing his computer science major at Georgia Tech. Hi Ayush, thanks for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great. Let's start with your introduction straight away, right? Why don't you help us understand a little bit more about you? Give us some context, some background.
Absolutely. So, my name is Ayush Gharat. Currently, I'm a second year computer science student at Georgia Tech, which is here in Atlanta in the United States. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm studying computer science, and I am actually on a 3.5 year track. So, instead of completing my degree in 4 years, I've actually speed tracked the process so I can graduate a semester early. And yeah, I'm from Bangalore, India.
Great. And you want to talk about where you did your schooling from? Just a bit of background.
Absolutely. So yeah, I completed my high school in Head Start Educational Academy in Bangalore, where I studied IGCSE, the British or the Cambridge board, and completed that with my A levels in 11 and 12 before university.
Amazing, great. Thanks for that background. Let's start with the first question that I generally ask, right? So when you entered into college, right, did you enter with a specific major in mind, or is it something that you changed over the last 2 years?
No, actually, I entered with a specific major in mind. I think I was one of that part of the college student group where I knew which major I wanted to get into. Ever since high school, I had a ton of experience working with computer science, in particularly software and development, things like building apps, building websites, and I found that really interesting and wanted to kind of just continue that pursuit further on. So I decided to pursue that in college.
Amazing. So I think you might find most of the questions very difficult to answer since you are very clear about the major. But let's try and understand. I'm sure you will have experience from other folks, other friends that you've spoken with, right? So I think in terms of major, right? So how did you personally go about selecting your major? Was it in ninth grade when you decided on computer science, 10th, 11th? When did you really finalize that it's going to be computer science? And were there certain incidents or experiences that made you fall in love with computer science?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my experience with computer science actually starts probably all the way back to sixth grade, where I first started kind of learning about the concept of coding. It started very organically just through watching YouTube tutorials, the free Code Academy courses you find online. And really just started there, but it slowly organically developed. I continued learning and understanding more about what all these different coding languages are, how are they different, and what can you do with them. By eighth grade, I think I had gotten deeper into app development, mobile app development specifically, and actually started building some apps that people could use, that I could use, I could send to my friends, and so on. So I think by then I'd gotten familiar with technology, and between eighth and ninth grade was where I actually really had to make a decision about my college aspirations and in terms of whether I wanted to study in India or the US. The reason being was that would decide which board education curriculum I follow into ninth and beyond. And I knew that if I wanted to commit to the US, ninth grade would be a good time to actually start thinking about that and planning that. And then, of course, with deciding where to study, I also kind of ended up deciding what I'm going to study. Computer science made the most sense for me, not just from a perspective of what skills I already have, but also in terms of the fact that I just liked technology and I liked building things, and software and computer science was the best way for me to actually bring those two together. It really just started with that, and as I kept going in ninth and tenth and beyond, with knowing that these projects are going to be stuff that I'm going to present for my college, that I think also influenced it. But also at the same time, I just kept sticking to what I enjoyed, which was software and building stuff, and eventually those two went in hand, and it made those 4 years also really easy for me because I got to work on projects that I enjoyed working on and that I could actually turn into things that people could use and put them out in the public. And at the same time, it was valuable in my college resume. So, yeah.
So you spoke about grade six, right? Which is very early for somebody to kind of figure that out. So, kids generally are playing at that age. So how did you ponder upon, different languages, computer science? Was it your parents are from the same background? Are they software engineers? Is that something that had some little bit of influence on that?
So I wouldn't say my parents necessarily were an influence. My dad, although he grew up, and he became an engineer in the early stages of his career. After I was born and beyond that, he was more on the business side of things. So just a bit of background, he runs an independent fintech firm implementing banking software. So he's more involved in the business side of things, but definitely, I guess in some sense, his network, being involved in tech, and also meeting a lot of people who were building their own startups and being involved in that space of tech and entrepreneurship, I think that definitely plays an influence growing up. So yeah, I think once I got into that, it was really just very organic in terms of, today I see this YouTube tutorial that says learn Python in 10 minutes.
Right.
Like, what's Python? Look it up, see what it's used for. Then the next day it could be Java or JavaScript. And then over time, I found like languages that I probably enjoyed more than others. And or maybe a language where I liked the way it was applied. So for example, back in the day, Java was used to make Android applications. So I said, it would be cool to make a phone app. So I should probably try learning Java more in greater depth. So I think that played a key role in deciding how that development process, how that learning process went, rather.
Got it. Interesting. I wish if it's that easy for all the students, but obviously it is difficult. But good that you find the right calling at the right point of time. Now, let's talk about the college experience, right? So, why don't you share a little bit about your college experience related to your major? What did you expect, and how is it going right now, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely. So I think definitely going into college and going into Georgia Tech, and I definitely was expecting it to be challenging. Of course, I expected to learn a lot of new things and a lot of difficult things, because there's only so much that you can learn on your own, and especially when you're balancing it with high school and all these other projects on the side. So I was definitely a bit nervous. Of course, also another reason would be when you look at colleges and you see people working on these crazy research projects, or they're going on to work at big companies like Apple and Google, or even like the big trading and quant firms like Citadel. There's so many different routes that people go, but it can seem a bit kind of daunting to think that, in 4 years that could be me. So definitely it was a bit scary at first, but I think over the past couple of years, especially, I've realized that college is a place where it's almost like a catalyst for learning. You're always surrounded by people who also want to learn, and a lot of people who are also smarter than you. So you can learn from them as well. And there's a lot of opportunities also, be it clubs on the side, be it opportunities to work directly with professors, or things like internships as well. And I think those really give you a better understanding of what that specific major is. So even for me, computer science, I always assumed it meant just building apps and websites, because that was the part I was involved in. But going into college, I realized that there were so many different aspects. There's the theoretical aspect where you're learning about algorithms. There's the aspect about networks where you learn about how things like the Wi-Fi work, how a video call works. Why am I able to speak with you over this laptop? There's system architecture where you learn about how a computer is built on the inside and how binary can turn into the way a laptop works. So there's so many different aspects that I got to dip my feet in, see which ones I actually like, see which ones maybe I didn't want to learn anymore. I had enough of the maths and
right.
So you kind of just gain a better understanding of what your major actually means. I think that was the best part about the past 2 years.
And have you figured out this specialization as well? Generally, post second year, you have to kind of figure that out, right? So, are you clear on that aspect as well now?
Yeah, actually, yeah. So Georgia Tech takes a different approach to specializations as compared to other colleges.
Okay.
In most colleges, your specialization is a very specific niche. There could be something like data science or full stack development, or theory. In Georgia Tech, they have a different take where they have something called threads. Threads are more general overviews of a specific field of computer science, because computer science is very vast. So, for example, the fields that I've taken are people and intelligence. And there's multiple other threads. There's one called system architecture. There's one called info networks. And so, for example, in my threads, intelligence basically covers AI, machine learning, neural networks, and all that side of computer science. And people goes more into understanding user psychology and are trying to build tools that are catered for the users you have in mind. So working directly with your consumers, be it UI or UX or user interface or user experience development. So those are the parts that I kind of just found to be more aligned with my interests, and like working more with the product side of things, and of course also learning about AI. But a lot of my friends, they have opted for other threads. They're all learning different parts of computer science. So I think even just listening from their experience is very cool to see why someone would pick something else, and also what they can gain out of that. If someone's doing cybersecurity, and another person wants to go into theory and academia. So I think that's been really cool. Also, just learning about those different aspects.
Nice. And obviously, since you figured out the major so early, I'm sure you have certain career goals, right? So did you have specific career goals in mind when you were picking this particular major, or even when you opted for this particular college, right? And how is it going so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think going into college, my main goal was actually to get into tech entrepreneurship. Um, Also, having had the opportunity to work with various projects in high school, I found a deep passion for entrepreneurship and the idea of building your own product and building your own company. And I really wanted to take that into college. So I think that has pretty much stayed constant. But one thing that has changed is I started to learn more about other niches that may align with my interests. So, for example, the space of product management, where you come up with products by actually identifying cases where users are missing out on something and trying to solve a problem that your users might be facing. I found it to be a really cool niche because it's kind of like entrepreneurship within a company. You work with consumers and find a problem that they're facing and then build a solution around it. And I thought that was really cool. So that's actually a new space that I'm looking to explore, possibly through internships or through clubs. But yeah, no, to kind of answer your previous questions, I think this career goals have pretty much stayed constant, but I've definitely opened up new avenues that I might want to explore. Of course, also there's the whole challenge of trying to be an entrepreneur and build a company while you're in the US and on a student visa. But I think I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
Nice. No, I'm glad you're thinking in that direction, right? I think that is more important. I think that's the first step. And you're right. Product managers that's why I call as mini CEOs, right, within the company, because they take part of the product and try and understand what the user is looking for, what's missing in the product, and then based on that hypothesis, you start working with the software developer to start building it up, right? No, great. I think it's I think it's picking up. I think product management as a concept is picking up. It has already picked up over the last 8-10 years, I would say, right? No, good to hear that. Now, I think let's try and put ourselves in the shoes of a high school student. So, what advice would you give to a high school student who's probably currently playing outside or maybe at school? But at the back of their mind, they're also trying to figure out what I really want to do, right? So what's that major? What's that career goal? So do you have any framework for them that they should kind of adopt or use or try out to figure out the right major for themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say I have a specific framework in mind, but there's definitely some routes that you can go about in terms of exploring and understand what would make a good college major. I think the best way to do it is to go out, outside the classroom and actually dip your feet in the real world. So be it through internships or be it through projects, or even just as something as simple as meeting people from different majors and or like different industries and speaking to them and learning about what they do. I think that's really a great way to kind of understand fundamentally what different spaces and different industries mean. Because it's one thing to imagine what, say, for example, a computer scientist does. You look in the movies, you see people just hacking away at a screen, and you think, okay, that's probably, is that what computer science does? That looks cool. I want to do that. And then you go and then you actually like start coding, and you realize maybe this isn't for me. And it could be the same thing for other industries. So I would say the best way is just to get some real world experience. It could be something as simple as starting a project, or um, just messing around with something. If you like art, you can just start by making some paintings or making some art, experimenting with different styles of art, and maybe posting about it and seeing what people say. If it's cooking, it could start go down a similar route. To start cooking, trying different recipes, trying to make different things, see what you enjoy making. And I think over that time, not only do you gain a better understanding of these different spaces, but you also find out what you may like or dislike more. And I think that's a valuable sense of direction, especially as you start going into college.
Got it. And you know, obviously you came to college with a predefined major, but how important do you think it is for somebody who's still not able to figure out? I mean, obviously they tried, doing all the methods that you said, but let's say if they're still not very clear, or if they're confused between two or three different majors, is it okay to go undecided? Do you see that as a disadvantage? Have you seen in your friend circle, students doing that?
So firstly, I would like to say that I don't think it's there's no problem at all not being clear on which major to pursue when entering college. A lot of my friends have actually switched majors in college within just their first year. A lot of my friends started out as either mechanical engineering or neuroscience or even chemistry, and then switched to a different major. Maybe because they just didn't like it, maybe because they thought there were better opportunities than another one. So it always happens. It completely happens. In fact, I think until this year, Georgia Tech allowed students to switch majors freely. I think, and do it even before you've actually come to college. So you can get in on one major and then switch even before your first day. I think they just changed it so you can't do that anymore. But it's definitely possible. A lot of colleges allow it. And of course, Georgia Tech doesn't have the concept of an undecided major, but I know other colleges do, and I think that's completely okay. You can always go to college and use that environment to actually figure out what you like and dislike. And one of the things that I do on campus actually is that I work with the Alumni Association at Georgia Tech, and part of that involves speaking to alumni over the past couple of years, like in multiple batches, and just learning more about their experiences beyond college. And what I found out through there is that there's a lot of people who, in fact, graduate with a specific degree and then end up going into the real world and doing something entirely different. So, and they've always had good things to say about it. They may have switched degrees, but they definitely picked up skills and learnings that they were able to transfer. So I would say even if you don't know your major, there's nothing wrong with it at all. If anything, college is a place for you to sort of continue to discover and learn and possibly transition into a different major. And even if that doesn't happen in college, it could even happen beyond. And that's completely fine. People do that, and today they're pretty happy and successful. So I don't see anything wrong with it.
Great. Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And it's just that I didn't want it to go that far where, people kind of get confused and say, hey, you know what, I can probably do a major or finish my college in something else, and then, probably end up doing something else. But yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's how the real world works, right? But I think it's about one step at a time and not giving them a surprise altogether and say, hey, you know what, I don't have to decide the major any which ways because I don't know what I'm going to do, right? But yeah, at the same point of time, if you are very clear, like in your case, right, since sixth grade, you had an interest or passion towards something, I think it was a lot easier for you to, showcase your interest to the college. And hence, I think you were able to, get to a Georgia Tech, which is one of the, prestigious or the most difficult college to get into for computer science, right? Instead, if at all you would have started maybe in 10th grade, 11th grade, it would have been difficult because you spending time building those apps, whatever you're talking about. I think all of that requires a lot of time commitment, right? So the earlier you start, the better it is. Not like anything is lost in that process. And even if you've thought something else, once you land up in college and you figure out that this is not what you want to do, as you rightly said, you can always switch. And that's the advantage of going to US, right? I mean, you might have use it to your advantage. Great. I think let's do a quick reflection. I know there's not nothing much that will come out of it in your case specifically, but I still want to talk about it. So I think looking back, is there anything that you would have done differently in selecting your major, or you would have still continued the way it is right now at this point of time?
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think there's anything that I would have done much differently. Um, I'm trying to think actually, is there anything I could have? One thing I will say is I did apply to a lot of different colleges with slightly different iterations of this major. So, for example, CS and business at another college, maybe computer science and engineering as well at another college. So, there were definitely parts of it where I wanted to branch out and learn something new as well. Um, and at Georgia Tech, I didn't do that because how difficult the computer science degree is at Georgia Tech, and double majoring at Georgia Tech is like very rare. You never see anyone double major. You have to like submit a special form for it. So it just goes to show how rigorous the degree can be. But I definitely think if I was at other colleges, I would explore that a bit more and look at maybe how I could learn something that is um, slightly different, but also beneficial to learn along with computer science. So that's something I would have done slightly different, I guess. But yeah.
Got it. And what are the other colleges where you got admits from, Ayush, if you are comfortable sharing?
Absolutely. So some of the other colleges that I was considering along with Georgia Tech was UIUC, where I got in for CS and business as well, and Waterloo, University of Waterloo, where again I got in for the CS and business.
Right? The co-ops program? Was it a co-ops?
Yes, the co-op program.
Okay, that must be a 5-year degree though.
Yes, it was a 5-year degree, and those were kind of the three major colleges that I had in my contention.
Got it. And what made you select this college?
So I think there were a couple of reasons. One was, of course, I saw Georgia Tech as a growing hub for entrepreneurship. A lot of great startups have come out of here, and they have an incubator that is continuously growing and investing in startups. And I really wanted to be in that environment. I also liked the location, which I think ended up being a good factor. Being close to a big city and being in the south where the weather is a bit more tolerable.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think also just speaking to people who went to these three different universities, I got to speak with some from Georgia Tech, some from UIUC, and some from Waterloo as well. And I think a lot of people just I got the best kind of relatability with the person I spoke to who was from Georgia Tech. And the way he described the university and his experience there aligned with what I imagine and envision in terms of the kind of peers you will meet, the kind of professors you'll get to meet, the kind of opportunities you can get through your multiple years. And I think that definitely reinforced and made it pretty straight that I wanted to go to Georgia.
Got it. Great. I think on the final thoughts, right? Is there anything else that you would like to share with a high school student who's looking to go outside of India? And it doesn't have to be country specific. This child could want to go to UK, US, Canada, anything. But any advice for them?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think the biggest piece of advice that really turned out to be the most positive for me was to actually speak with people who've been there. Regardless of which part of the world you want to go to. If you want to go to the US, speak with people who've been to the US, speak with people who've gone to the colleges that you want to go to. And I think because one thing I definitely underestimated, I guess, and I am thankful for, is the people that you end up meeting in college. Because they in some ways become like a new family for the next 4 years. And you will learn a lot from them as well, not just from the classes and from the professors, but also from your peers. So that's definitely one thing that you should keep in mind, thinking about not just where I want to spend my college, but also who I want to spend that experience with. What are the specific aspects I want to learn from the people around me? Do I want to be in a competitive environment? Do I want to be in a collaborative environment? Do I want to be in an environment where I'm the best? Or do I want to be in an environment where I'm probably like the dumbest in the room, or somewhere in between? there's always pros and cons to everything, but that's, I think, one factor that I underestimated, but I'm glad that it worked out for me and for them. So I definitely recommend people to think about that. And, the best way to do that is to speak with people about it.
Got it. Any advice for the high school student when they are in that journey? Like, what should they be doing?
I would say, yeah, just keep looking at experiences. And I wouldn't say also fixate on specific countries or universities. Definitely, if there is a place where you have a certain connection with, but that's completely fine. But I've seen students fixate on, like, say, going to Harvard or going to Stanford and making that their goal. And I think it should be less about the university and more about the learning experience and the thing that you actually want to gain out of it. It's prestige and university name helps, but it only goes so far. At the end of the day, the person who's the best student at a mid-tier college will succeed, will go way further than the person who's an average student at MIT.
Right.
So I would say focus more on what you want to learn and what you want to become in the next couple of years than where you see yourself pursuing that.
Great. Thanks, Ayush. Thanks for your time. I think it was a pleasure talking to you, and I'm sure you had some great insights to talk about. I know you are very, very clear in your major, which is great and good for you, and I'm sure there are other students as well. And I think one key takeaway learning for me is if you're very, very clear, then start working on it early, right? I think do more of projects, do more of experiential learning. I think that really helps. And as you rightly said, I think try and see if you can do internships, if you can do more projects. Because I think that will also either sway or dissuade you towards the major or away from the major, right? So I think that will also definitely help. Thanks again. Thanks for your time, Ayush. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me.